Hi, Professor Gronlin here. Let's do a little chemistry. I wish everybody loved chemistry as much as I do, but I happen to know, sadly, not many people do. Whether you like chemistry or not, though, chemistry is the central science. You need to understand some chemistry, whether you're studying physics or geology or environmental science or astronomy, you get the idea. In relation to our study of the human body, structurally, you are made up of atoms and chemical interactions are behind all of your physiological processes. So, to understand human anatomy and physiology, you will need to know a little bit of chemistry. In this video, we will review some chemistry basics, the periodic table, atomic structure, and chemical bonding. Let's start at the beginning. Our world is made up of approximately 118 different kinds of substances called elements. These elements are organized on a periodic table and they are grouped by common properties. We'll get back to that idea a little bit later. If you take a sample of an element and cut it into smaller and smaller parts until you have the smallest part that still maintains the properties of that element, you'll have an atom. Atoms are made up of subatomic particles, protons that are found in the nucleus. Each one has a positive charge. Neutrons, also found in the nucleus, no electrical charge, and electrons in motion around the nucleus, each with one negative charge. Let me make a quick disclaimer here. If you've already taken chemistry or physics, you know that there are other subatomic particles, but we don't need to get into all of those for our very basic chemistry needs here. Hey, let's look at that periodic table. Notice that each element has a unique atomic number shown. This is where it gets really cool. That number tells you how many protons there are in each atom of that element. So, hydrogen, number 1, means that hydrogen atoms each have just one proton in their nucleus. Lithium, number 3, 3 protons in their atoms. Now you try it. Sodium is number 11. How many protons? Sure hope you said 11. Let's take the next logical conclusion. Since the world around you is basically electrically neutral, that means that the atoms that make things up are basically electrically neutral. This means that if a sodium atom has 11 protons, and each one of those has a positive charge, that means that we must also have 11 electrons so that we have 11 negative charges for balance. So, if you know the atomic number, then you know the number of protons and the number of electrons in each atom of the element. How can we figure out the number of neutrons, though? Notice on the periodic table that we also have an atomic mass. Obviously, the mass of an atom is going to be an extremely small number and really not much fun to write out. For example, 1/12 the mass of an atom of carbon is 1.66 times 10 to the negative 24th grams. Happily, our chemistry friends have created a standard called an atomic mass unit, AMU. And since protons and neutrons have relatively similar masses, they've assigned them 1 AMU. Much easier numbers to work with. Electrons have been assigned 0 AMU. Now, if we're being realistic, obviously, of course, it's not 0. Electrons are matter, and all matter does have mass. But in this case, the electron's mass is so incredibly small compared to the protons and neutrons that for our purposes, we can just say it's 0. Now back to that table. The atomic mass tells us the total number of protons and neutrons in the atom. Since we know the number of protons, then we just subtract that from the mass and we get the number of neutrons. When you look at the table closely, you can see that the atomic mass are not always just a whole number, meaning it's not quite as straightforward as what I just said. That's because many elements have isotopes. That is, atoms with different numbers of neutrons. When they calculate the mass for an element, the percent of the different isotopes is part of the calculation. When the mass is close to a whole number, for example, beryllium is atomic number 4 and has a mass of 9.012, so almost all of the beryllium atoms do have 4 protons and 5 neutrons. But look at magnesium, atomic number 12. It has a mass of 24.3. So most magnesium atoms have 12 protons and 12 neutrons, but quite a few have 12 protons and 13 or 14 neutrons. These isotopes have applications in medical procedures such as PET scans. The next thing we need to figure out is how the electrons are arranged around the nucleus. That actually turns out to be pretty darn tricky, since they're always in motion and they're particles that act more like clouds. They are found in different energy levels called shells or orbits, and within each of those levels there's different orbitals. We're going to have to drastically simplify all this and find out just enough to understand chemical bonding, which involves those electrons. The orbits around the nucleus only hold a certain number of electrons, and then they're full. The orbits closest to the nucleus have the lowest energy state, and for an electron, that is the best seat in the house. But for the first orbit, it only holds 2 electrons. The second orbit, the second most favorable energy place, holds 8 electrons, and the third holds 18, and so on. So when we're trying to place the electrons, add the first 2 to the first shell. When that's full, add the next 8 to the second shell. When that's full, move to the third shell. And now, here's what's great about biology. Living things are made up of very light elements. 96% of the elements in your body are a combination of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. The remaining 3.9% are also very light: calcium, phosphorus, potassium. This means that for the elements that we work with, the electrons are all placed in the first few levels, and we don't need to get into the details of the orbital filling patterns. Let's practice. Pause the video and draw an atom of sodium, atomic number 11, atomic mass 23. Hopefully your diagram has 11 protons and 12 neutrons in the nucleus and 11 electrons outside that. The first 2 electrons should be in the first orbit, the next 8 in the second orbit, and the one that's left over in the third orbit. Now pause again and try that for chlorine. Atomic number 17, atomic mass 35. Do you have 17 protons and 18 neutrons in the nucleus and 17 electrons outside? The first 2 electrons should be in the first orbit, the next 8 in the second orbit, and the leftover 7 in the third orbit. When sodium and chloride are put together, they chemically react to form sodium chloride. But why? The secret is in those electrons in that outermost shell. Those are called the valence electrons. The most energetically favorable configuration for those electrons is when there's 8 valence electrons. Well, 2 if you're talking about the elements with the very fewest electrons. So when sodium is combined with chlorine, the sodium releases 1 electron from its third shell. That leaves its second shell with a complete 8. But now look what happened to the electrical charges. Sodium has 11 protons, so 11 plus charges, but now only 10 electrons, so 10 negative charges. It's now the sodium ion with a +1 charge. Ions with a positive charge are called cations. The electron that sodium gave up went to the chlorine atom. It had 7 valence electrons, but now it has 8. But it now has 17 protons, so 17 plus charges, and 18 electrons, so 18 negative charges. It's now a chlorine ion with a negative charge. Ions with negative charges are called anions. And voila! Now these oppositely charged ions stay together. An ionic bond has been formed between them, resulting in the compound sodium chloride. Okay, now let's try this. Suppose that you have a jar of just chlorine atoms. Each atom has 7 valence electrons, not energetically favorable. But none of those atoms are going to donate electrons. What do? They share. It turns out that if 2 of these atoms come together and share a pair of electrons, it's just as though they had picked up that extra electron and filled their shell. This sharing is now called a covalent bond, and in this case we formed the chlorine molecule. Atoms can actually share 1, 2, or 3 pairs of electrons, forming single, double, or triple bonds. These bonds are stronger than the ionic bonds. Let's revisit that periodic table for a minute. We said that elements within a family have similar properties. If you drew out the structure of the atoms in family 1, you would find they all have 1 valence electron, while the elements in family 7 all have 7 valence electrons. Since those valence electrons are involved in bonding, it is what makes the elements within a family have similar chemical properties. When atoms from families 1 or 2 are combined with elements from families 6 or 7, you can predict that an ionic bond will form. If you combine elements from families 4, 5, 6, or 7 with each other, then covalent bonds will form. Now look at the elements that form the majority of your body. If you are assuming that they combine to form covalently bonded biological molecules, then you got it. Well done. Soon we will be taking a closer look at the biological molecules, carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and lipids, as well as the role of salts and other inorganic compounds in humans. Throughout your study, these molecules will be discussed, as well as the chemical reactions your body does every day of your life. And I have to tell you, I'm secretly hoping at the end of the course you have a new appreciation for and understanding of chemistry.